I always say that one of the biggest reasons that makes me think that taekook have something more than just friendship is because of their body language. And when I say that, people always get confused over why or what I even mean by that. There are hundreds of things that you can look up to when it comes to seeing what kind of relationship two people have. Is it just friendship or is it more? Based on their body language, of course, but I decided to show you 5 main things that you can look up for when you want to look up someone's body language and see what kind of relationship that person has with someone else. What do you think is the most important thing when someone makes a conversation with you and you want to understand and get their message? Albert Mehrabanian from UCLA University in 1950 said that 7% of it is verbal. It means what kind of words you use. 38% of it is vocal. It means the kind of voice you use or the kind of tone you have when you make that conversation. And 55% of it is about gesture and expressions. So it means the most important part when you want to send a message to someone is actually the gestures or your body language. It's interesting to know that a lot of the things we use in body language do not come from our experiences. They actually come from our DNA and were there since we were born. We found out about it by researching on people who were blind and could not actually mirror or copy other people by watching them. What I'm trying to say is that not everything is about which kind of culture you're from. And even though some gestures are universal, some gestures are actually different based on different cultures. Our bodies are actually machines that don't do anything for no reason. The smallest things we do actually have a reason. So you have to think of our behaviors as a certain language if you want to be able to read it. And you have to understand that most of these things happen unconsciously. So most of the times you can't really fake it unless you're a really, really good actor. And you're doing it for a really good cause. Anyway, now that we mentioned what body language is and why it's important, now let's jump into the 5 things I wanted to mention and see if it fits with taekook or not. The 5th thing I want to mention is that if you are interested in someone or if you're a couple with someone, your body is always hyper aware of them and wants to stay close to them or wants to do most of the things you want to with them. It's actually very evident when it comes to the times you're spending time with them and when you're not spending time with them. When it comes to your body, it means that every time they do something, you're aware of it, even if it's something really slight or small. And your body is usually toward them, your legs are usually toward them to pay attention to them. You're always aware of them. And it's something that I've seen with taekook a lot. And it's not the only thing. Even their moods change extremely when it comes to the times that they're together and when it comes to the times that they're not. For example, if you see the times that they sit together in fan signs, they're always goofing around, just joking around, and they're always happy and smiley. But there are times that they don't, and you can see that they get silent and not as hyped as before, especially when it comes to Jungkook. Or when they are at award shows and they sit together and goof around all the time, they are happy and they're not even faking it. But when it comes to the times that they're not together, you can see that the usual hype is not there most of times. I'm not saying all the time, most of times. For example, in here or in here, Jungkook is literally sulking in this one. And not just this, they usually plan things ahead just to spend time with each other. For example, they try to spend as much time as possible with each other when they want to be in the same team or when they want to listen to the same music and tell each other about their day or about anything else. The most obvious thing about this is when one of them knows about the little things that the other one does, but everyone else doesn't know because they really pay attention to them all the time. There's this saying that says when you love someone and when you feel comfortable with them a lot, they feel like home. And that's the kind of thing I see with them because it seems like when they are together, they seem very relaxed, very comfortable, and very, very happy. Of course, this one is not just limited to people who are a couple. It can be a very, 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 very close friendship. But just pay attention that this is something that is really necessary for couples as well. When you are with someone, you want to be us with them, not me and you. That's why it's important for your body to always pay attention to them and want to do things together with them most of the times. The fourth thing that I want to mention is when you are a couple with someone, or when you're just interested in someone, your eyes keeps falling on some certain part of their body. You can also say that you start checking them out in certain ways. Even if you've lived with them for a very long time, there are times that your eyes just, goes on some certain places. And even though Taehyung and Jungkook had been living together for a very long time, there are still times that you can just see the way they check each other out. For example, they look at each other up and down, even though they're not really doing it for the camera. Or when their eyes keep, looking at each other's butts or something, or even groping each other. Or getting so flustered when they talk about how pretty or handsome or good looking the other one is.
일단 잘생겼고
I mean, sure, you can acknowledge someone being good looking and handsome without being attracted to them. But at the same time, when it comes to checking them out and getting really, really shy or flustered when you talk about them, it gets a little bit strange to be just friendship, because your body is showing signs of attraction. And this is something that I see a lot with Taehyung and Jungkook. Change of voice and posture is the third thing I want to mention. I want you to imagine yourself next to your crush. How would you behave around them? One of the things people usually do is trying to show their best sides to their significant other. Boys usually deepen their voices to sound more masculine.
야, 또 멤버들 이렇게 또 도와준다. 이런 멤버는 없습니다, 네?
왜요? 심심해서 왔어요?
아니?
그럼요. 그거 따라가라고. 저 파들고 따라가. 또 지금 심상치 않습니다. 잠옷인가요 그거?
아닙니다. 외출복입니다.
아 진짜요?
중국 씨 이걸로 제가 외출한 거 보셨지 않습니까?
네, 못 봤는데.
안녕하십니까. 목소리 깐 거 봐.
야, 그 내년에 보는 건가요? 아, 맞다. 너 20살이지? 되게 20살입니다.
They stand in a very straight way and try to look sexy and desirable by pushing out their chest and showing off their arms, etc. Some people get very competitive and try to do their best in everything in front of the people they like. This is something I see in Taekook a lot. The second thing I want to mention is something that I've already mentioned before, but it's very, very important when it comes to couples. When a couple are in their early stage of courtship, it's common to see them behave with synchronous movements, almost as if they are dancing. For example, when one of them takes a mouthful of food and something like this happens. Or he begins a sentence and the other one finishes it for him. Or subconsciously they end up copying each other or mirroring each other or doing things that the other one is thinking about doing. It's very strange, but it actually happens with couples or family members. And it's not just that, some couples even start looking like each other. When you live with someone for a very, very long time and you're very close to them, you start looking like them because you keep mirroring each other's expressions. And that's why over time, your muscle starts forming the same way as your significant other. You could say that could be the reason why lately Taehyung and Jungkook look really similar, because over time they kept trying to mirror each other's expressions, they just ended up looking like each other. Or why sometimes they don't even need to talk for the other one to understand them, or why they keep finishing each other's sentences, or why they have the same habits, or why every time something happens, they end up reacting the same way. The first thing I want to mention, and in my opinion the most important one, is personal space. Everyone have a bubble zone that determines how close people can get to them based on where they grow up. People who grow up in populated places like Japan and Korea usually need smaller bubble zones. We actually have 4 different zones in this bubble. The furthest one is our public or audience zone, which is usually 3.6 meters or even more. When we get closer, then we get to our social zone, which is for strangers or people we just walk past. It's usually 1.2 to 3.6 meters. Then when we get closer, we get to our friend or personal zone, which is where our friends or family or other people can get close to us. And it's usually around 46 centimeters to 1.2 meters. But when it gets even closer than that, it goes to our intimate zone. It's usually the zone we share with people we are very close to or we are actually intimate with. People like our family, our pets, or someone who is really extremely close to us and we don't even mind getting intimate with them. Korean people tend to let some people who are very close to them inside their intimate zone, but even they have some limits. First thing about limits is that they might let them get in, but they don't stay for long, and it doesn't happen all the time. And if they can, they actually try to avoid and still take some distance, you know? And there are a few things that can determine what kind of relationship some people have. One of those things is the distance between hips when 2 people embrace each other. That's what I mean when I say that skinship is normal in Korea, but everything has a limit. Because even though you see people embracing each other all the time, you usually don't see their hips pressed against each other. And you don't see them kissing each other. Actually, do you remember this? Do you remember when Hoseok was trying to kiss Jungkook's neck? I want you to pay attention to his body language. As you can see, he tried to just get away from the hold. That's what I'm saying. Even though this kind of things happens, but when it comes to normal interactions, there are always limits. Taeyoung is actually one of the people who talks about the limits. For example, do you remember when he told Jimin that he's a pervert because he kept touching hips without even noticing? And then right after that, Jungkook kept pressing his hand on his hips and keeping it there, and Taeyeon didn't care about that. Even though before that he already said that that was kind of a limit. Or the other time when he said that 2 people holding hands is kind of strange for just 2 friends. And then you can see him holding Jungkook's hand all the time. Or when he was asked to kiss Jin on his cheek, and he refused. He said he really doesn't want to do it. But only a few months before it, he kissed Jungkook's scar on his cheek, and no one even told him to do it. And actually all the members were like, yeah, are you sure you want to do that? When it comes to Jungkook, he is not really the one who initiated that much compared to other members. But when it comes to it actually happening, he is the one who permits it most of times. For example, do you remember this scene? At first, when he felt someone right at the back of his neck, he looked really shocked and everything, and then he looked at his side and he relaxed when he saw Taeyoung behind him. That's what I mean when I say personal space. Even though Korean people tend to be very touchy and everything, which is cool, and it's totally okay when Taeyoung and Jungkook are like that with others, but even they have limits, and you just have to see their limits personally. And when you look it up, you can see that those limits don't exist between Taeyoung and Jungkook. It just only exists between them and other people. As I mentioned, there are hundreds of other ways you can just guess if 2 people are together or not based on their body language or behavior. But to me, these 5 things were very interesting, so I wanted to share it with you because it was fun. What I told you are based on different researchers on different universities, but also my personal observations on body language. So just remember that this is just another analysis and theory video. It's just I always try to pay attention to their bodies and how they react, and they seem to speak Valium to me. They don't seem to speak the same language they speak with other members. It sounds more intimate.
But I still